Future Hacker, Life, Path, Future.
Welcome everybody for the second international edition of Future Hacker. This is Maria Taide, and today we're going to interview Peter Kronstrøm, the head of the Copenhagen Institute for Future Studies for Latin America. The Institute's mission is to facilitate knowledge about potential futures, and it hosts many events during the year in Denmark and abroad. They also produce a lot of content such as reports, magazines, and books. Hi, Peter. Thank you for your time with us today. You started working on this field back then when you created the Future Lounge in Argentina. Is that right? Could you share this experience with us?
Yes. Hello, Maria. Big pleasure to be here with you guys today from Future Hackers. And it was a very interesting times in my life. This is now back 12 years ago. I'm born in Copenhagen and lived here up until I reached the age of 30. And then I moved to Buenos Aires to try something new and study an MBA. And then I always known about future studies and always been passionate about future studies. During my MBA, I thought it was quite interesting. I discovered that there was very little active future studies happening in Argentina and in all of Latin America. Like doing my MBA, wanting to be an entrepreneur and wanting to do something outrageous and new and exciting, I started thinking about, wow, it could be really interesting to bring some future studies from Copenhagen to Argentina. So then back in 2008, I arranged together with the Danish Chamber of Commerce in Buenos Aires a first event where we invited a researcher from the Copenhagen Institute. The event was a great success. At that time, I don't know if you know, Argentina, which is dear to my heart, a wonderful country, but maybe when we look at long-term planning, it is not one of their most specialized activities. So I thought that this was a great match. And then together with a friend in Argentina, Jorgelina Carpaccio, we created a company called Future Lounge, where we brought this view of future studies to Argentina. And then life would have it. 3 years after, the Copenhagen Institute for Future Studies, they thought it was an interesting project. I knew them personally. Back then I moved to Brazil, and then we became the Copenhagen Institute for Future Studies in the Latin American version. And so the last 12 years I've been engaged in this field, bringing future studies to Latin America. And of course, it's been a great joy to see how in the last 12 years, the area of future studies has really grown, especially in Latin America. And I think it's been a very interesting voyage to follow how Latin America always is very keen on adapting things that are going on outside. And I think this is really the way you can see future studies evolving in Latin America is really, really a great testimonial about the curiosity and theft, or what you call it, the thirst for new things that we find in Latin America. One of the things I'm so happy to live in Latin America.
This is such a great story, Peter, because, as much as working with future studies must be really inspiring and for sure never boring, as you mentioned, the curiosity and all the new things that you learn all the time. For sure you had many challenges, right? So I'm curious, as you started the future studies in Latin America, is this field any more challenging in our territory when it comes to future studies compared to other parts of the world? Do you see any difference in behavior and in people acceptance?
Yeah, for sure. I think Latin America is a very unique continent, and it's a very unique cultures, and also the Latin way of doing things is also very different, which persists, of course, some challenging compared to doing future studies in Copenhagen, for instance. You can say that, but also some advantages, because everybody who works with the future, we are always highlighting that the future is highly uncertain. And I think that when you live in Latin America, we get this uncertainty even more under the skin. So in a way you can say, I would even evaluate that it's even better to engage in future studies in Latin America, especially because of the high level of uncertainty almost on all societal levels that we find in Latin American countries, like political instability, much more crazy economical crisis, much more crazy things happening. So that in a way is great of inspiring future. And also we have to remember we are talking about Latin America as the new world. I also think that people in general are more open and not so rigid in their way of thinking, and also much more natural with dealing with uncertainty. I mean, this is one of the things I always say, that Brazilians, for instance, are much more prepared for the future than many Europeans. And why is that? Because Brazilians and also Argentinians are much more capable of dealing with the unforeseen, the unknown. Because for decades we have been used in Latin America to dealing with a highly uncertain future. And this is really one of the keys to doing good future studies.
I love that, Peter. And that's so true, right? So let's go back. You mentioned uncertainty a lot. So let's go back so our listeners get a better understanding. What does really future studies means, right? So according to the Institute, future studies is not about predicting the future, which, someone that is not so aware about the subject would think. It's rather about building resilience and identifying opportunities in the face of uncertainty, while also embracing what can emerge out of complexity. I think this couldn't be more applied regarding today's reality as well, thanks to COVID-19, right? So how has this impacted the Institute's work, and how have you been dealing with the global demands for answers? So as much as you're focused on Latin America, which is, a continent based on uncertainty everywhere, now I think we are living the extreme of this situation on a global level, right? So how is the Institute, how are you dealing with all those demands for answer?
That's a great way of phrasing it. I always used to say in my presentations and working with clients that when you call the Institute of Copenhagen, it's not about getting the future right. Exactly as you say, our way of doing things is not to guess the future exactly, because then if we had like a glass ball or a crystal ball or some cards of tarot that would tell us everything that was going on in the future, I mean, I always make the joke that then I would be living on my own island in the Caribbean, because I would have won the Mega Sena so many times, or the lottery. But so our approach is based on being aware of alternative futures and resilience in the way of strategic agility, so that I always say that one of the most important foundation of future studies is creativity and the ability to think out of the box, to think outside of the box. So that really you need, when you're looking into the realm of future studies, you need to be able to train the capacity to think about alternative futures, and by extrapolating these alternative futures, they are normally turning out to be a great way to identify potential threats and opportunities in the future. So really, it's much more about thinking the unthinkable than actually getting the future right, because that doesn't exist, as we know. Because we always say, the future doesn't exist. The future is not some kind of monster that is coming and taking all our jobs or ruining our world. No, the future is unlimited, endless number of scenarios that can all happen. And the future is created right now in this moment amongst all of us. A big part of our job is actually highlighting our personal responsibility and opportunity that we have to create the future in this very moment.
That's great. And it makes a lot of sense. So it's all about drawing different scenarios regarding alternative futures, right? So still talking about COVID, 2 months ago, the Institute did a webinar in which you presented some interviews with panelists of different experts. By then, there was no consensus regarding the future post-COVID. There were 2 statements. If by 2030, we would have a more globalized world, so people come together in terms of solidarity and collaboration, or if it's going to be the opposite. The crisis will drive us more apart. It's going to be more disintegrated, and it's going to be a less open world. So you had this panelist of different experts, and there was no consensus about it. So does the Institute has any findings regarding those possible different future scenarios?
I think we have many findings, as you say. As the Institute, we are a network of researchers, and we are all allowed to have our own personal opinion. So I will speak a little bit about my personal opinion. I think we still didn't come to a final consensus. We have some researchers who believe that we will see a more globalized world, and others who believe that maybe the more globalized we have to get even further in the future, and maybe by 2030 we will still be living in this, because right now we are seeing a little bit of a disintegration of the world. I think it's a very good thing for the world in general that we are moving towards a multipolar world. So we are actually seeing a power shift going on. The US and Europe are no longer the only world leaders, and we have Asian countries coming in as well. My personal belief, or my present analysis, is that I really believe that we are seeing the United States a little bit doing a drawback from the role that they used to play in global politics. And I think actually that leaves a lot of interesting space, for instance, for Brazil and all other Latin American countries and other countries in general. And I think apart from the United States having a little bit of a drawback from the global scene, my analysis is by 2030, we will have a more globalized world with more connectivity, but it will not be the old power structure that we are leaving behind. It will be new power structure. But I do believe that COVID-19 and the quest for a vaccine and for solution will lead to a more globalized world by 2030. And even globalization has been one of our mega trends for the last decades. And there's no indication that this globalization will not continue to grow in outreach and also how it will develop the future world. So my present analysis is that yes, by 2030, COVID-19 will have created a more globalized world. And on this note, I'll just say, I think that one of the key things that we have actually seen of the COVID-19 impact on the world is that it's actually accelerating many futures. So many futures that we were expecting to happen in 5 or 10 years down the road, we are seeing now happening in questions of months. We are talking, for instance, digitalization, e-commerce, preventive healthcare system, online learning, remote work. A lot of things are happening in a speeding up futures we would see in 5-10 years are happening now in a question of months. So that's really interesting. But then the idea that COVID-19 will make like a new renaissance and that it's like a portal of Narnia where we will come out of a paradise, I don't believe that so much, that analysis. I think that this moment has a very powerful message because it's putting everybody on the same page. And that links back a little bit to what we talked about in the beginning. And what is this page that everybody is on? That we don't know shit. Sorry, my language. That we know very little things. And actually, I think that this is maybe the true power of the moment. That we are at a page where everybody is realizing that we really know very little about our present world. And I think that will be an initiation of a lot of innovation and creative new thoughts and new solutions, and a lot of knowledge production will explode out of this realization that truly the present and the near future is extremely uncertain.
It's a great answer. So, let's dig into the acceleration of the future. So in your experience and what we're living now, which are the industry sectors that are getting more organized to prepare for the future? And going back a little, so our listeners get a better background. So the Institute, they act as a future advisor. So they basically conduct custom researchers for company, organizations, the government. They help throughout the decision-making process, scenario planning, trends, and risk analysis, right? So basically you get demand from the market for specific studies. So I have two questions for you. So what are the most common requests that the institutes are receiving, during this time, this crazy time that we're living now? And then again, which are those industry sectors that you feel that are getting more prepared to face this future?
Perfect. I think I will start with the first question. I think what is really on everybody's mind right now, everybody wants to know, what is this new normal going to be like? And so I've been giving, and then another thing, and the demand, that I think that there's an even higher demand right now for future studies than there were 6 months ago. And the demand is especially focused on what will be the impact on society, the COVID-19, and how will this new normal be? And will there be any long-term impacts now? So that is really what is the focus that I'm seeing in the demand for my knowledge and for my analysis right now. It's especially the impact of COVID-19. How long is it going to stay, and what will there be any lasting impacts? No, and I think that just to rough it up, I think that there is going to happen a new normal, and that will last for a couple of years. I think that in terms of the long-term impact, I don't believe that people will. I think that maybe the actual pandemic that we are living right now will not have so many impact 20 years from now, but probably 10 years from now. But maybe what we are talking a lot about is that probably this pandemic is an initial rehearsal for solving problems that are much greater and much bigger that are lined up for our planet in the following years. And then the other question that you made, we are seeing, and I believe strongly, that especially the global healthcare sector, our healthcare systems, they are being reorganized at warp speed of light. And also our preparedness for future pandemics are being reorganized. Everything that is e-commerce, the vast digitalization we are seeing these years is also some of the industry sectors that everybody is digitalizing fast now. And also everybody has to adapt for online. We at the Institute, I do maybe 80% of my time I spend on live presentations. And so we have been also forced to adapt to all these new platforms. And it's actually been really remarkable, interesting to see how fast the world is adapting to go online, no? And so we do workshops now online, and we do consulting online. We do everything online, and actually the move to do online was not so difficult. So I think that's interesting. And then, of course, another industry sector that is also adapting very fast is the whole education sector and online learning models. Those are some of the few. But all industries are impacting, from how we design our cities to how we design our houses to how we design our products, how we think about live entertainment, how we think about restaurants, food, supermarkets, social monitoring. Is it safe? Are we having bunks of people together? So a lot of sectors and industry sectors are actually being impacted by COVID-19 and accelerated in terms of supplying more safer way that are pandemic safe for our near future.
That's all very interesting, Peter. Thank you so much. So actually, this is the end of our first episode with you. So for our listeners, stay tuned. Soon we are going to begin the second episode with the interview with Peter Kronstrøm, the head of the Copenhagen Institute for Future Studies for Latin America. Stay tuned, everybody.
Future Hacker. Life. Path. Future.